Good Vach Shvatov. Hope you're doing well. I am in Yerushalayim, and we are on Lamed Dalet Amud Beis. Hope you're all doing well. We are up to the Mishnah. Let's pick up. Slightly different topic, but we're still talking about our Eruv, Tchumen, where it could be placed, where it can't be placed. The Mishnah begins with the following: Nesano Barosh Hakana or Barosh Hakundas. If the Eruv is placed on top of a reed or on top of a pole, and what that specifically is something which is not wide, and therefore it's basically a long stick, and then you have a little flat thing on top. You put the Eruv on top of that. Bisman Shu Talish V'Nav. As long as the reed has been uprooted and then stuck in the ground, right? So if you recall, we saw earlier this idea of you can't use something that's on a tree on Shabbos. So the reed over here, the Mishnah is saying, has to be uprooted and then stuck into the ground. Then afilu gavo mea ama, even if it's 100 amos high, how is it Eruv? It's an Eruv, even if it's in the Rosh Hashanah. So remember, the public domain stops after 10 amos. So why is it okay over here? Because it's not a private domain. As long we saw earlier that if something is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide and higher, then it's going to be Rosh Hashanah. But if it's very narrow, then it's not a Rosh Hashanah. It's called a Mekom Petur, which is an exempt place, and therefore you're allowed to take something from the public domain to the Mekom Petur, from the Mekom Petur to the public domain, and therefore I don't know how you're getting to the top of the 100 amos high, reed. But the point is that since the place that it's on is not a public domain, therefore you're allowed to take something down. Since it's not a private domain, since it's Mekom Petur, you're allowed to take something from it and bring your Eruv into where you are residing in the Rosh Hashanah, and therefore it's a good Eruv. However, the Gemara makes a very interesting observation. Rami le Rav Ada bar Masna le Rabba. Rav Ada bar Masna asked the following to Rabba: Talush v'naotz ein. The Mishnah says that the reed has to be uprooted and then stuck in the ground. Lo talush v'naotz lo. But if it's not uprooted and stuck back in, if it was just naturally attached, then it wouldn't work. Money. Who does this go like? Rabbanani. Da'amri kol davar shemishim shavos gazra la ben hashmashos. This goes like the rabbis who say that things are forbidden when they are during the twilight period. Remember, we saw machlokas earlier. Rebbe said that ben hashmashos, between sunset and nightfall, you're allowed to do a rabbinically forbidden thing. And therefore, if you recall that we saw in the earlier Mishnah, we said the Mishnah goes according to Rebbe because the Eruv, which was placed on a tree, which was under 10 tefachim, we said you're allowed to make that a good Eruv. Why? Because it's in the Rosh Hashanah, and we asked, hey, wait a second, you're taking something from a tree, but that's okay because it is to take something from a tree is rabbinically prohibited, and therefore, since it's between the Eruv only kicks in bein hashmashos, and Rebbe holds bein hashmashos, all the rabbinic decrees do not apply. This Mishnah seems to be going like the rabbis because the Rabbanan say that the Mishnah says specifically it has to be a reed that was uprooted and then stuck back in the ground. But if it was simply planted, meaning it was just a regular tree, it was a regular branch, then it would not work. Okay, the Mishnah asks, therefore this Mishnah seems to go like the Rabbanan V'Amras Reisha Rebbe. The Mishnah before this, which is really attached, right? The Mishnah, you have to keep in mind, we read Gemara in between each Mishnah, but the Mishnahs are just read one after another. It's the first Mishnah, which said you could take something from a tree, that goes like Rebbe, who says you could do rabbinically prohibited things during Bein Hashmashos. This Mishnah, which says that the reed has to be a reed that was uprooted and then stuck back in, meaning it's not a real something attached to the ground anymore. It's no longer a tree. That goes like the Rabbanan. So Reisha Rebbe, the Sefer Rabbanan, you're going to tell me the first Mishnah before goes according to Rebbe, and this Mishnah, just the next line goes like the Rabbanan? That doesn't seem to make sense. Amar le, so Rava says, actually, yes. Rami le Rami Barcham le Rav Chisda. Rami Barcham already asked this question of Rav Chisda, Vashani le, and he answered him, Reisha Rebbe, the Sefer Rabbanan. He says, yeah, sometimes this happens. At the end of the day, it's two Mishnahs, even though they're side by side. The first one goes like Rebbe, and the next one goes like the Rabbanan, like the rabbis, and therefore it's not a problem. Okay, Ravina gives a different answer. Ravina Amar Kula Rebbe. Really, this all goes like Rebbe, and therefore, really, you should be able to move things off the reed, even if it was not uprooted and stuck back in. Even if it was just a regular reed, it's no different than a tree, and it's only rabbinically prohibited. He says, "V'seifak zera shema yiktam." When it comes to a reed, we're actually a little bit more stringent. We're a little more stringent because that although typically rabbinic decrees we're going to waive during this time, but the decree about a reed is actually a stronger decree because the chances of you breaking off a piece of the reeds are very flimsy. They're just not very strong, and therefore a person could go ahead and touch the reed and the reed could break. And therefore, even according to Rebbe, who says normally allowed to do rabbinic things, bein hashmashos, here he would not allow that because the chance of a person ultimately breaking something off this tree, off this reed, is so much higher than a regular tree, and therefore it's not allowed. Okay, so therefore Ravina is saying they're both Rebbe, just over here, this is a rabbinic decree that even Rebbe would agree would apply during bein hashmashos. Now we bring a story, which is going to ultimately be a question. There's an army unit once came to Narda, and there was no room in the city because of that. So Amar Rav Nachman told the student, Poku avidu kavushe kav Go and make a place for us to assemble by pressing down bunches of reeds in the marsh. Okay, so on Shabbos, that's when they had the big class, and they would normally gather like in the marketplace or some public place, but he had this army there, and it was taking up all the space. So he told them, go to the marsh and go take the reeds and press them down. And tomorrow we're going to sit on it. Ask the Gemara, Rav Nachman, Rav Ukva Bar Abba Rav Nachman, Talish no it's in, Talish lo no it's low. The Mishnah just told us that when it comes to reeds, whether the Rabbanan or even we saw according to Rebbe, you can't touch reeds on Shabbos because reeds break very easily. So how could he tell them, go push the reeds down and then we'll sit on them? How could he sit on the reeds? So we just said that you can't put your Eruv on the top of a reed because even being a shmashos, you would not be allowed to take something down because the chance of you breaking it are so high. Meaning it's forbidden to go and sit on these reeds because the chances are you're going to break it. So how could Rav Nachman tell his students to go put the reeds down? They were going to sit on them the next day. So we're talking about reeds that have hardened. Okay, there's different types of reeds. Some have hardened. When they're hardened, the ones in the Mishnah are hardened. When they're hard, it's much more brittle, and therefore it's easier to break. When they're soft, we're not concerned the person's going to break them, and they're not included in the rabbinic decree whatsoever, and you wouldn't be allowed to sit in them. And that's where Rav Nachman told his students, on the soft ones, go to the marsh, go push down the reeds so we could sit on them, and they're soft ones, we're not going to break them. But the hard ones, that's where they're more like a tree. Once they're hard, they become like bark like a tree, and they're brittle, and therefore those are the ones that were forbidden to use to put an Eruv on top of. Where do we see that we distinguish between hardened and hardened reeds? Do we really see halachic differences between if it's a reed is a reed is a reed? That's the Gemara is going to show. No, the Tanya is talking about Brisa. Hakanan v'atanan v'higin, reeds, atad bushes and higi bushes. Okay, all different types of thorn bushes. Min ilan hein ve'enin kalayim b'cherem. They are trees and therefore they're not part of kalayim. Kalayim in a vineyard is if you plant grapevines next to vegetables, then it's kilayim. But over here, these are types of trees, and therefore they're not kilayim. Now, keep in mind, the first example was reeds. Reeds are a tree. And then we have a tani idach with another brayso which says, hakanim akidim v'hakidan v'arbanin, reeds, cassia, and osiers, I don't know what that is, min yarakain v'kilayim b'karim. They are vegetables and are kilayim. Okay, kasha dadi. One brayso says, kanim, reeds are trees. One says it's not trees. So how do you reconcile this? Shmamina, kan muzradin, kan m'shem muzradin. Shmamina, we see the Gemara elsewhere in other halachos distinguishes also between reeds which are soft and therefore they're going to be more like a vegetable, and reeds which are hard and they're going to be like a tree, and therefore they have all the decrees of a tree, which is you can't handle them on Shabbos. Okay, ask the Gemara and just now we mentioned the price like kida min yaraku. How could you say cassia is a species of vegetables? So it's not a markivin begam al gabi kida levanam neshu yarak ilan. It says you cannot graft a root plant onto white cassia because it's grafting a vegetable onto a tree. So you see cassia is considered a tree, and yet in the price above is considered a vegetable. And rapapa kida lechud v'kida levana lechud. There's a difference. Our price above was talking about cassia, and this price below was talking about white cassia, and that is a tree. Okay, next Mishnah. A person placed the Eruv in a closet and then lost the key. Okay, the Eruv is therefore not accessible on Shabbos. So how's the Eruv? The Tanna Kama says no problem. It's still an Eruv. We'll see why in a moment. You can't reach it. How could it be an Eruv? We'll see. In an Eruv, if you don't know where the key is, it is not a good Eruv. So Rabbi Eliezer says no. If it's not accessible, it's not a good Eruv. Says the Gemara. Why is this? The person is. How could there be a good Eruv? The person is residing in one place, and the Eruv is in a place, meaning a totally different place because he can't access it. So Rabbi Shmuel, we're talking about a closet made of bricks. The person's allowed to break through and take the produce out of a place made with bricks. Okay, what that means is as follows. Just now, let's see the Mishnah. I'll explain a little bit more. A person fills produce, a house filled with produce that was sealed before Yom Tov, and therefore the food is not accessible when Shabbos began. If the wall of the house is breached, and the Gemara explains that there was a part of the house which was already breaching, so you knew that part of the house was going to breach, you're allowed to take produce from that place because that was not muksa. But the rest of the food is muksa because since you weren't able to access it on Shabbos, you weren't thinking about it before Shabbos. And therefore, muksa means like it's something which is designated as off limits. It's off limits because I didn't think I'd be able to use it on Shabbos. Or Meir Omer, he disagrees. Poches could break through the wall and take the food because he holds there's no rabbinic prohibition of breaking down a wall. So ask the Gemara. So therefore the Gemara is saying over here too, Rameir, the Tanna Kama is Rameir. Rameir says the reason you're allowed to get, it's not an issue of the fact that the key excuse me, the reason it's not an issue that Eruv is in the house is because you could break down the wall, and it's not an issue of soser, it's not an issue of breaking things down, according to our mayor. Ask the Gemara of Amar of Nachman bar Adam or Shmuel, Ba'avira delivni, that we said about that Mishnah that we just quoted, we're talking about places where the bricks were not cemented together. So it's a very specific type of house. We're not talking about any house. You can't just go into a regular person's house and huff and puff and knock the house down. It has to be a house which is bricks which are not cemented together. So Gemara says, it says say the same thing in our Mishnah. It's bricks which are not cemented together. Ask the Gemara further, this was only allowed on Yom Tov, but not on Shabbos. Why would there be a difference? Soser, bone, those are building, destroying, those are things which are relevant to Shabbos and Yom Tov. The Gemara there explains that he holds you're allowed to break it down. There's no issue of breaking it down. The issue is that even after you break it down, the stones themselves are muktzah. The only way to get to the food is by moving the stones, and therefore you'd run into another muktzah issue. So it was only allowed on Yom Tov where you don't have the same restrictions. Muktzah laws, all laws in general on Yom Tov, many laws are generally a little bit more diminished, and therefore the same level of muktzah, since it's going to help you to get food, will not apply. So the Gemara is talking on Yom Tov. Say our Mishnah is also talking about Yom Tov. Gemara asks if that's so. We have a brayse that says about a Mishnah the following: Lezer Omer in Be'ir avad Eruva Eruv. If the person lost the key in the city, his eruv is a valid eruv. In Masada avad ein Eruva Eruv. If a person lost in a field, his eruv is not a valid eruv. Now, person lost the key. So again, Rabbi Lezer was the one who said that you have to know where the key is. But if you lost the key in the city, it's okay. If you lost in the field, it's not okay. So carrying on Yom Tov is not usher. Carrying is only usher in Shabbos. So when it says Yom Tov, Mali Ir Mali Sada, if we're talking about Yom Tov, who cares if it's in the city or in the house? A person can carry. So what's the difference? It must be used on Shabbos. So Gemara says you're right. This is a way to read the Mishnah. A person placed the Eruv in a closet and locked it up and then lost the key. How is it Eruv? It's a valid Eruv. Ken, according to our mayor, because you can knock it down. When is this so Yom Tov? Specifically Yom Tov because he holds there's no issue of breaking down this structure. I love the Shabbos and Eruv, but on Shabbos, it's not a good Eruv, right? Because on Shabbos, you would hold that even though you can knock it down, since there's a muktzah issue, he would not allow this. Fine. And obviously, by the way, so our mayor says you can knock this type of structure down. The Tanna Kama holds that even this type of structure, even though there's no cement, at the end of the day, it's too much of a structure, and therefore you're not allowed to knock it down. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Okay, so the Brisa continues, and this is the way we're going to read the Brisa now, so there's no issue. Then the Brisa continues, says, and going back to Shabbos, if a person finds the key on Shabbos, whether in the city or the field, any Eruv Eruv, Reb Meir, the Tanna Kama holds, is not an Eruv because the key can't be carried at all if it was found in the city or in a field. The Ezra remember Eruv Eruv, Basada Eruv Eruv. He holds that if it's found in the city, it is a good Eruv. So why does Rabbi Eliezer say? That it's going to be a good Eruv if it's in the city? Do you see what's happening over here? Rabbi Eliezer, basically, there's two machlokas going on. It's no longer in the same machlokas. First point that's being made is that if there's an Eruv in a building, Tanna Kama says it can't be accessed. That's Rameir. Rameir says it's fine, and then Rabbi Eliezer says it's not good. You can't access it. It's no good. However, on Shabbos, and you have a new machlokas. On Shabbos, if you find the key, Rabbi Eliezer says as long as you find the key in the city, it's going to be okay. Rameir says no matter where you find the key, you can't carry the key, and therefore it's going to be. And for the key issue, not everyone's going to agree that you're allowed to carry the key. Okay, but then Gemara asks, regarding Eliezer, why does he say if it's found in the city, it's going to be a valid Eruv? Reb Shimon, he goes like Reb Shimon to Amar Echad Gagos. We saw this earlier. Echad Ganos, Echad Chatzeros, Echad Karpefos, roofs, Chatzeros, and Karpafs, which are enclosed by partitions. Rishus Echad Tein Lekilim Shavs B'Sochan. Remember, he said that if you have a bunch of different distinct Rishus Hayachids that are side by side, you carry from one to the next, and therefore Eliezer holds that if you find the key in the city, which is right next to a rooftop, so you just jump to a rooftop and then you go to a backyard and you go all these private domains, one to the next, you're allowed to carry, and therefore it's Besada in Eruv. But if you're coming from the Besada in Eruv, but regarding taking it from the field, it's not a good Eruv Karabanan. He holds like the Rabbanan. We'll see later on. There's another machlokas where Rav Shimon is going to allow even carrying from the field for a different reason, and because he holds you're allowed to go carry, less than 4 amos. The Rabbanan say that can't be done lechatchila. So then in that respect, Eliezer holds like the Rabbanan. So basically what's coming out of a Mishnah is as follows. There's two things going on. One, again, is you have this structure. And normally we have the concept of bona and soser. Normally the Gemara tells us elsewhere, it's going to come up again soon, that bona and soser is only applicable to a building, to a structure. Okay? It doesn't apply to kalim. Ein binim mistira bekalim. Okay? It doesn't apply to utensils. And we're talking about a structure. We're not talking about a house. We're talking about a closet. A closet is really a utensil. It's not a house. So the Tanna Kama though holds, because it's a very tight structure, because it's a very firm structure, therefore it's considered destroying. Rameir says no, at the end of the day it's a keli, it's a utensil, therefore it's not a problem. Again, we're going to come back to that point in a second. There's a second machlokas going on in the Mishnah, which is if you find a utensil you find the key, right? So we said that's all about Yom Tov, because on Yom Tov, even when you finish breaking down that thing, they still have to move the stones, and the stones are muksa. So on Shabbos it's going to be an issue, and Yom Tov is not going to be an issue. Okay, now on Shabbos, if you find the key, according to the whole, so the question is carrying the key, and Rabbi Ezra says you're allowed to carry the key in the city, because you go from rooftop to rooftop to rooftop, which is like the opinion of Rav Shimon. Behold, if you find in the field, that's like does not hold like Rav Shimon in that respect, and he says you therefore cannot carry it into the city, and therefore you find the key outside of the city, you won't be able to do anything. Now it's important. This Gemara touches upon a very interesting machlokas about binyan and stira, building and destroying when it comes to a package that's very strong. So everyone agrees, if you have like a bag of chips and you want to open your bag of chips, everyone agrees there's no issue of building or destroying. Let's say destroying the bag of chips. You didn't destroy anything because it's nothing, it's utensil. It's no destroying for something that's flimsy. However, when it comes to like a can of tuna, let's say, there's other issues which we have to talk about opening things, but when it comes to a can of tuna, that's a very hard item. So is that considered binyan or stira? So sort of Chazon Ish holds that there is an issue of stira. Actually holds it binyan because it wasn't a usable utensil until that point. Then you take it off, because even though it's a utensil, we see from this Gemara that there are types of structures which are very strong, and therefore, even though it's not a building, there'll be at least a rabbinic form of building and destroying that would apply, and therefore he holds for something which is very permanent-esque, like a can of tuna, which even though most people throw out, at the end of the day, there's a form of building. Most poskim disagree, and therefore we across the board do not hold this issue of building and destroying when you open a can of tuna. But there are poskim who, based on similar Gemaras to this one, which hold that opening a can of tuna would be an issue, because again, even though it's a utensil, but we see from this Gemara that hard utensils, like that building, that structure, which is a bunch of bricks, if you knock them down, according to an opinion, that's destroying because it's a building. Well, it's not a building, it's a utensil. No, but when something is very strong, then we'll treat it like a building. Similarly to this can of tuna. Okay, we'll stop over here. We'll pick up tomorrow. Have a great day.